Hey friends, this is Derek Bros with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we are going to talk about the Mueller report, Donald Trump, redaction, Russia, all that whole mess of things. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. Of course, you can get all of our latest video content. You can get my latest articles, including some that I haven't done videos about, Monsanto lawsuits, CIA torture, Donald Trump, and oil pipelines, which I will be doing videos on some of these very soon because it's important info. But either way, you want to make sure that you are plugged in so you can get all of our videos, all our content. Follow us on Minds, follow us on Steemit, follow us on Discord, on Remind for our text list, and support us on Patreon if you want, and all that good stuff. So before, I started to make this video, I was a little bit reluctant because if you guys have heard me talk over the years, you know that I really try to stray away from reports and stories that have been just so overdone. How many times do you have to hear about the Mueller report being released a few weeks back, right? How many times do you have to hear that the Mueller report was released redacted and that it proves collusion or it proves whatever the heck you want it to prove and things like that? Even the independent alternative media, so-called, has beaten this down, with a stick. So I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about it. Instead, what I'm going to focus on today is something I know you haven't heard. Because the mistake here, my friends, is that I realize that a lot of channels, especially on YouTube and elsewhere, everybody wants to do something that's trending. Because the benefit, say for example, today, impeach Donald Trump is trending. So if I was to do a video called Impeach Donald Trump, or why you should impeach Donald Trump, or why you shouldn't, or whatever, just some sort of play on that phrase, well then surely my ratings will go up, my views will go up because that phrase is trending. More people will search it. Most likely they'll find my video. And voila, I can get some hits, get some subscribers and all that. And for those who are monetized, that means they can get some money. So you often see this on some independent media, alternative media channels where they're just, I know you guys are sick of it out there, friends and supporters. Like, you didn't leave the mainstream just because you want to hear somebody else talk about the mainstream issues. You left the mainstream because the mainstream's not talking about the real things. So I really hesitate to just rush into that mess and say, okay, here's my take on the Mueller report. Instead, I like to bide my time, sit back, be quiet a little bit, and be patient and see what they might not be telling you. And I think I found something. So, of course, if you do a search on CIA Google, which the reason I'm using Google is to show you guys just what pops up through Google. I use DuckDuckGo, but this is what you're going to get if you search through the CIA's platform, which most people do. Mueller report redacted. I just searched that, right? And here's all the different news. See how much of the Mueller report is redacted. Here's how to read the redacted report. Read Robert Mueller's full report on Russian interference in the 2016 election. 10 best footnotes. Redacted Mueller report reveals Trump White House in disarray. Dems reject Barr's offer to view a less redacted Mueller report. So, anyways, you can go on and see this. And, well, what you're going to find, though, it usually is split along partisan lines, that the conservative media is going to, not mention Russia. The left-wing media is going to mention Russia, and the CNN, the quote-unquote balanced middle-of-the-road media, will also talk about Russia. And what I'm getting, and this is the problem, a lot of independent media, alternative media are also talking about Russia. So the reason this video is called the sleight of hand is because for a couple of years now they've been telling us that Trump was guilty of colluding with the Russians and hacking and messing with the votes and all this kind of stuff. They accused him of everything. They accused him of spreading spreading propaganda about GMOs, about spreading propaganda about war, waking people up, basically. They accused RT of all kinds of things, and they've been trying to tie Trump to that for a long time. The Mueller report does not clearly show that. In fact, it kind of says that that there is no clear ties to Russia and Trump, but it does conclude this: the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion. Trump denied that Putin and Russia wanted him to win. But Mueller writes, quote, the investigation established the Russian government perceived it would benefit them from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome. So this is the mainstream take. I'm sorry if I've been kind of long-winded. What I'm getting at here is that the mainstream wants you to think that now that the report is out, the left wing is saying, look, it does show, obviously it shows connections to Russians and it shows that Trump attempted to collude. The right wing is saying, yes, it does show connections to Russia, but Trump did not attempt to collude with them. And when in actuality, we have no clear connection of either of those things. There is, despite what they're claiming, there is still not definitive evidence that Russia interfered with the election in some way. They keep saying that, well, we know that the GRU, this Russian internet team interfered with the election, and that's clear, conclusive. Now the only debate is whether or not Trump colluded, right? So do you see how they shifted the goalposts, where even the right wing and the Republicans, and even Trump himself, went from denying that Russia had anything to do with the election to now saying, okay, well, Russia had something to do with it, but Trump did not collude. Now, some would say that this is because Trump is changing, he's changing the goalposts because they're getting closer to the truth and revealing that he's a Russian bot or a Russian agent. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I found this article from The Dissenter from Kevin Gostola, who is one of the only people on shadowproof.com, one of the only people I've seen that's actually questioning this. It says, on WikiLeaks email releases, Mueller team ignored findings of former U.S. intelligence officials. So again, all the mainstream press, middle of the road, left wing, right wing, and even some of the independent alternative media are claiming that they're going along with this whole Russian narrative now. People went from being skeptical to now going along with it. But as this article here points out, that we have individuals like Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, VIPs, which includes people like William Binney of the NSA, made up a group of former military intelligence officials who conducted their own forensic tests that didn't receive much attention in the press. And they basically found that the files, the DNC emails that were published by WikiLeaks were leaked. They were not hacked. So they weren't hacked by some Russian group from the GRU that the mainstream media is now trying to claim. And in fact, even in the Mueller report himself, this quote right here, it says Unit 26165 officers, which is referring to that same Russian unit, appear to have stolen thousands of emails and attachments, which were later released by WikiLeaks. But appear to have indicates that the team did not have incontrovertible proof. They could only speculate. And then the report also says, quote, the office cannot rule out that stolen documents were transferred to WikiLeaks through intermediaries who visited during the summer of 2016. So it goes on to just point out that they really don't have this evidence. Despite, again, the media running with it, and despite WikiLeaks, including Julian Assange, previously saying that Russia was not their source. Now, you could say, well, Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, they always try to protect their sources. Like, they didn't even want to admit that Chelsea Manning, Bradley Manning at the time, was their source for a lot of their leaked war logs back in the 2000s, early 2000s, mid 2000s. So maybe that's it. They just don't want to admit where their information came from because they're trying to protect sources. But also, when you put it together with some videos I've done before talking about a man by the name of Seth Rich, where Julian Assange even sort of pointed to Seth Rich and sort of said that people should look further into it. And if you don't know who Seth Rich is, go back to our channel and search that name, or I'll link the video below. Seth Rich is, of course, the guy who is working in the Hillary Clinton campaign, working with the DNC, who some suspect was the leaker of these emails to show the truth about Hillary Clinton. And he was later found dead of, according to the police in D.C., a robbery gone wrong, and he was killed. And different people started looking into that, started digging into that to see if he was in fact the source of this. Instead, the media has harped this narrative that it was Guccifer 2.0 and it was Russian hackers and things like that, because they want you to think it's a Russian hack, as opposed to the fact that it could potentially have been somebody from within the DNC themselves who released these things to WikiLeaks and to Julian Assange. And of course, these emails contain the Podesta files, which led to all kinds of, talk of Pizzagate and pedophilia and lots of weird things, as well as exposing Hillary Clinton of basically being a goon for the corporate entities out there, like all the politicians are, basically. But this is a quote from Julian Assange a while back during a press conference in January 2017. He said, even if you accept that Russian intelligence services hacked Democratic Party institutions, as it is normal for major intelligence services to hack each other's major political parties on a constant basis to obtain intelligence, you have to ask, what was the intent of those Russian hacks, and do they connect to our publications, or is it simply incidental? He said, the U.S. intelligence community is not aware of when WikiLeaks obtained its material, or when the sequencing of our material was done, or how we obtained our material directly. So there seems to be a great fog in the connection to WikiLeaks. As we have already stated, WikiLeaks sources in relation to the Podesta emails and the DNC leak are not members of any government. They are not state parties. They did not come from Russian government. The Clinton emails that were released during the election dated up to March 2016. U.S. intelligence services and consultants for the DNC say that Russian intelligence services hacking the DNC in 2015. So they were hacking even before Trump was around, according to these intelligence communities. So let's say that the Russians were trying to hack, which does seem likely because, again, all governments do that, as Assange noted here. They all hack each other. They all try to gain data from each other. That was going on way before Donald Trump was around in the picture. So whatever WikiLeaks got, whoever it came from, it doesn't seem to have actually come from the Russians. But now that the Mueller report has come out and there's talk of potential collusion, and are they going to impeach Donald Trump now? The narrative has shifted to just blindly accepting this idea that it was a Russian hack. So people are falling down on the job. Independent media, alternative media, I'm not going to name any names, but I'm sure you guys have noticed this on some of the channels where all of a sudden it's being pushed that it was the Russians. So this is another part from this, a statement from the Mueller report that says, although it is clear that stolen DNC and Podesta documents were transferred from the GRU to WikiLeaks, and then it's redacted, right here, you can see this. It cuts off there because the rest was redacted to supposedly protect a, quote, investigative technique. That's what that's the reason they gave for why they redacted this. But I mean, that sentence, it says, thus, although it is clear the stolen Podesta documents were transferred from the GRU to WikiLeaks, something, 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 something. That second part of the sentence could be pretty vital and pretty important. It could say, although we believe they were transferred from here to here, the hack or the leak did not originate there. You know, it could have, there's a lot of different ways this could have happened. And I think that Seth Rich is definitely a part of this story, whether or not people want to admit it or not. And so I'm just going to leave this link to this shadow-proof article here by Kevin Gustola, and it does a great job of really digging into this and pointing out the flaws, both from the VIPS group, which includes William Benny that I mentioned. And they said in a memo addressed to William Barr, Attorney General William Barr, we have scrutinized publicly available physical data, the trail that every cyber operation leaves behind, and we have had support from highly experienced independent forensic investigators who, like us, have no access to grind. We can prove that the conventional wisdom story about Russian hacking DNC emails for WikiLeaks is false. So, you know, you have independent experts, former government intelligence agencies, which, I mean, agents, which, like, yeah, I mean, it's hard to trust anybody who's worked in the intelligence agency. Maybe they're still working. Maybe they're still operating at some other level, even though they've left their official positions. But it does show you that not everybody in the intelligence community, despite what the mainstream media says, you got to remember that a while back they were trying to claim all of the intelligence agencies agree this was done by Russia and it's hacking and this and that. And then later that got found out to be a lie, that it was only just a small group of the intelligence community, not this consensus that they're now pushing. So from Donald Trump to the independent media to the mainstream media, people are pushing this idea that it is conclusively a Russian hack of the 2016 election. And now that's, you know, we're going to see where that leads. And you have to ask who benefits from this. You know, I had a friend say, well, why would they want to point the finger at Russia? What does that benefit? Well, Russia is allies with Syria. Russia is allies with Iran. Those are two prime places that the United States Western Empire wants to get into and has been trying to get into. Russia stands in the way of that. By continuing the Cold War and continuing to push this idea that Russia is the big bad guy and ignoring, of course, the crimes of the U.S., they are further stoking the flames of the new Cold War, which also involves a trade war with China. And this, I think, is just part of their narrative to push for war with Iran, war with Syria, and to use proxy wars against Russia. And Trump himself, of course, by participating in this whole idea that it was a Russian narrative, but that he had nothing to do with it, what that does is it makes him look good in the eyes of people who wanted to claim that he was a Russian puppet. Now he can say, no, I'm not a Russian puppet. It was these dang Russians. Even I know that, but I had nothing to do with it. So there's a lot more going on here than what they want you to be looking at. And I hope you guys are skeptical and discerning and able to see through that. I just wanted to share that. Like I said, I hate talking about mainstream garbage and mainstream stories, but when I don't see people really exploring these narratives on a deeper level, I got to step in. I got to say something. So from here on out, expect less and less mainstream news and more independent news stories that you're not hearing, like the articles I've been writing, like the ones you can find on theconsciousresistance.com. So please bookmark us there, like, share, subscribe, follow, share this with your friends, send them a letter, send them a carrier pigeon, send them a smoke signal. Just let them know the Conscious Resistance exists, and if they want to wake up and be informed, they can come to our website. Till next time, guys, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.